Bienvenidos de nuevo a Oportunidades en Grecia, el podcast en el que tratamos de acercar las oportunidades que en el marco de la internacionalización, de la exportación, la inversión y la captación de financiación, el país presenta para la empresa española. Welcome again to Oportunidades en Grecia, the podcast where we try to get business opportunities regarding exports and investments in the country, Greece, closer to Spanish companies. Today, in this our 14th episode, we'll talk about something we haven't been dealing so far, which is a fantastic channel through which the Spanish exporters could eventually sell their goods and services, which is e-trade, e-commerce. And I think we couldn't have a better person to talk about this than George Hadjigeorgiou. George, how are you? Pleased to meet you. Pleased to have you here.
Great, thank you. And thank you for spelling my name correctly, because it's something most people can't do.
It's not an easy one. Thank you for being here with us today. George, let me introduce you briefly. I took some notes from your profile on LinkedIn, which I think could help understand what you've been doing, what you do these last decades. Engineer by education and at heart, who loves designing and creating things, from machines to software, teams and organizations. Particularly intrigued by scientific round thoughts problem solving in any creative area. And today, and for quite some time, I would say, you're behind the steering wheel of Skroutz. Skroutz being the market-leading marketplace in Greece, which you co-founded in 2005. You specifically mentioned that the platform emerged from your personal need to provide an easier alternative to endless Googling when shopping online, which I find very, very appealing. As you say, your vision is to make online shopping easy and accessible to everyone, everywhere. It's a good vision and a good mission, I would say. So once again, thank you for being here. Let me just put out there a few numbers regarding internet and e-trade, e-commerce. In the case of Greece, the percentage of the population that uses internet has grown up from 70% in 2018 to 84% in 2023. We see double-digit growth numbers in e-commerce for the last couple of years at least, and the forecast is also double-digit growth in e-commerce for the next years, at least until 2027. And a lot of merchandise, a lot of goods are exchanged in marketplace through e-trade, e-commerce, and specifically through marketplaces, from fashion, you name it, clothing, shoes, to cosmetics, electronics, and so on and so forth. But let you talk about these issues. You're the expert, you know better. And let's just dive into the Q&A. So first question to sort of like frame the conversation, which we would like to know, Spanish companies would like to know more about, is how digitalized is Greece? I put out there some numbers, but how digitalized is the population? Is there something that the company should bear in mind when it comes to the geographical distribution? Mainland, islands, rural, urban, and specifically how digitalized is the consumer?
So Greece has around 10 or 10.5 million people. And almost 60% of them are located in two cities, Athens and Thessaloniki, where Athens is 45%. So it's probably one of the few European countries where there's so much people in one city, so many people in one city. So 50% of any business has to do with Athens. Then there's another 10% Thessaloniki, and then there's another it's an island, Crete, but you can consider it as a major city in Greece because it has all the lines, the ship lines that a city would have, and it has 1 million people. So I would say that logistics in Greece, they're quite easy to get to 50 or maybe 60%. Then the rest, 40%, is kind of hard. So the islands are a bit difficult, but there's not so many people located in the islands, and especially during the winter, where most of them return back to the cities. And I would say, in terms of digitalization, it used to be that we said how many people have access to internet, which is after 2010, I would guess, maybe 12. This is not an issue anymore because everyone has a cell phone. Even like 5-year-olds have a phone, and Greeks love their phones. I don't know how's the situation in Spain, but we really
it's pretty similar, I would say.
Yeah, we love our phones. We talk about them all the time. It's the number one interest of anyone. And you can see even grown-up people or young children having phones. So I would say in that area, everyone has access to the internet, which is, I guess, the number one source of information and also services. And lately, Greece was lagging in terms of how digitalized the government is. So until 2020, you had to do almost everything, by visiting a government shop or some specific government service. But from 2020, and I think COVID helped a lot in that area, almost all interactions you have to do with the government are digitalized. There are quite a few left, but like selling a house or something like that. But the most common are digitalized. So I would say that we've done a pretty good progress the last 4 years in terms of digitalization. Some old companies are still trying to catch up. Our banks also. I wouldn't say that we are Germany or the UK or the US. We're probably far behind the average in the European Union, but there's a lot of catching up. In terms of e-commerce growth, for example, the average e-commerce growth in the European Union is 14%. We're around 8 to 9%. And I think the main reason is there wasn't any infrastructure for that. So our mainland logistics network was built not for e-commerce, but it was built for small parcels, documents, things like that. And now it's catching up. And this is one of the reasons that Skroutz went ahead and invested in a last mile company, and we are trying to redefine that sector.
We'll get to that. Because I think that's a very important part, logistics and transportation and so on and so forth. But before that, and I totally agree with you, I think the digitalization of the administration has been quite a landmark from this administration, and that has pushed forward, I would say, all of the transactions within the digital world. I would like to ask you, when it comes to e-commerce, firstly about B2C, which sort of company trades through e-commerce? Which sectors you see move more within this channel? Which are the alternatives and how much do they use them? Because we know the companies could have their own e-shop, they could sell through multi-branded distribution e-shops, or they could go through the marketplaces such as Skroutz, which we will talk about in a few minutes. So what is the trend that you see lately?
So traditionally, almost all e-commerce stories start with electronics, consumer electronics, white appliances, those, let's say those items that we call technology or electronics. But in recent years, there's been an uplift in fashion. So a lot of people will buy fashion online, especially from very known brands. One is, anything that has to do with Inditex. But what we saw the last, especially, it started a bit before COVID, but the last 5 years, almost any category is now the buying online is an alternative that is not the last resort in people's minds. So they will firstly check online, they will do the research online, and then depending on the availability, they might do the purchase offline, but they also might do it online. So the trend is anything that has to do with health and pharmaceutical products, makeup, beauty products. We also see a lot of traffic in books, leisure. Skroutz my data come from Skroutz, so I know that we are a quite diverse marketplace. So we don't have only technology or consumer electronics. So we also sell fashion, even buy anything that has to do with food and premium goods related to food. So we do anything. And I think the trend now is that more and more people are considering online as a good enough alternative to offline.
It's very interesting what you said, people checking online and going to the shop to buy, or otherwise checking on the shop and then going online to double check and get the best product, right? That omni-canality on it that we talk about so often. What's your appreciation about what's going on in the B2B world, the B2G? Well, I think maybe that's less important in terms of volume, but in the B2B world.
So I think for small businesses, I think online is an alternative, but for all other businesses, I mean, medium to large enterprises, it is still the traditional way, because there's a lot of services that come with the products as well. So you need you need to know that there will be someone for you if something goes wrong. So whether it's equipment or products or replenishment of products, you probably need to have a relationship with the seller providing those products. So B2B is not so used to online, I would say, especially for medium and large enterprises, except maybe for one-off items. So I would guess that Alibaba is probably a good alternative for when you're, for example, you're trying to buy equipment. You can do it once off.
Let me ask you, I have here some of the attributes that we found in companies that do have an e-shop. And we see that from more to less, most of the companies do have in their websites links to social media. Some of them have their own catalog and the possibility to order. Way less have the possibility of following up the orders or even the customization of the visit or of the products. What do you think would be a more important thing? What is more important for the client from all those issues?
Client is the consumer or the seller?
The consumer.
So I think what we've seen from Skroutz is that the consumer is mostly interested in the quality of the service. So how many days it will get to get to my door? How secure is the transaction? And Greeks, having had some serious issues with credit cards and credit card abuse in a couple of decades ago, they're quite afraid of using digital money. So we still have 20% of cash on delivery. I think if you go to the UK or advanced e-commerce countries, that's like 100%. Although Germany, I think, has some cash on delivery. So I would say that trust and service are very important. And since we have one big city, and if you're living in Athens, you have so many alternatives. So waiting for a package to come in 2 or 3 days, it's probably not that convenient as to walking like 5 minutes and getting the same item from a retail store. So what we're trying to build is a very good service, which would be similar to the customer driving or walking to a retail store and picking it up from there. And then, of course, the merchandising is very important. How doubtless is the experience. We also offer, for example, free returns for fashion items. So I think it's a combination, and not just one, but many areas of the e-commerce journey that appeal to the consumer. Not just the service, or maybe if it's nicely presented in a social media. It depends on the category as well. So fashion, I think social media is probably more lucrative, but for convenience items like diapers or things like that, you want the convenience and fast service. So it depends on what you're buying as well.
I see. Well, it's great that we are having the conversation with you, because you guys in Skroutz have you guys sell a big range of products, and that helps have a clear view of the whole channel. Let's talk a little bit about Skroutz, about the history. How do you come with the idea, and what has been the evolution of the platform, and where it stands as of today?
So we started back in 2005 as a joke and not as a company. So
First comers, I guess.
no, I think there were a couple of companies doing the same thing, but professionally we did it because we liked the idea. So 2 of the 3 founders were engineers. So it was like children playing with their toys, not businessmen. So we didn't have any business plan. We didn't raise any money. It was just like, let's see if this has if it adds any value to consumers. And then the traffic caught us on, and we had our day jobs. We had to keep our day jobs because Skroutz wasn't generating any revenue. It was free for a couple of years. So at some point we were working like 18 hours because we had a regular job and then the Skroutz job, and we said we need to either stop doing it or just admit that this is going to be a real job and focus on it. So that's when it actually started transforming to a business. Long story short, we started as a price comparison. So we didn't have transactions within the website. But then from 2016, we transformed to a marketplace. So now, today, 75% of all transactions in Skroutz happen are through Skroutz. So we handle fulfillment, we take care of support, we take care of everything. We have our own warehouses. We also have our own last mile company, which does almost half of the deliveries of Skroutz are handled by our own last mile company. We have 2,000 lockers. So we're trying to build not just...
I can see the lockers everywhere.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that. I can see the lockers from Skroutz almost everywhere.
We're trying to build infrastructure for e-commerce. And we realized early on that unless we do something to lift all the doubts of the consumers, for example, Greeks are not very... it's not very common in Greece to stay home. So you're never at home. You're either at a coffee shop, or a cafeteria or somewhere. So waiting for an item to be delivered to your place was one of the barriers in e-commerce. And the lockers solve that perfectly, and that's why we see the adoption of the lockers is like 60% of all consumers choose a locker and then stay on the locker. And I think it's going to get bigger. That's what the trend is now. Today, we have 9,000 merchants. We do 1 billion of GMV. And we also have expanded to Cyprus. We also have groceries vertical, and we also have a C2C vertical where consumers can sell their used items and buy used items as well. And lately, we're trying to expand to the Balkans, mainly Romania and Bulgaria.
Well, it's a success story, clearly, and much more to come. Hopefully.
Thank you.
Let me ask you briefly about some concepts that have to do with e-trade, e-commerce, and specifically most of them with platforms or marketplaces. When you hear something like brand registration, what do you think? What should the companies know?
I think the process is now pretty straightforward. You have to pay like 600 euros or something like that, and you can register your brand in Greece. We can also, I think, help in at least to kickstart the process. We can help with warehouses, or we can help with connecting brands with merchants that can sell the brand's products. I think just testing the waters should be quite cheap and fairly easy. and I think that lately we've done a lot of progress as a country in allowing merchants from outside of Greece to sell in Greece. We have, I think, 20 or 30 big international merchants, the ones that have done all the work, because you need to have your products translated, you have to handle currency. It's not so easy, but we have done quite a lot of work in that area, and I think the European Union has done as well. The one-stop shop is a solution, and in some cases it creates some market dynamics between VATs and...
that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about, which is about taxes, right? The one-shop solution, taxes, VAT under 10,000 euros, over 10,000 euros. Could you throw out a couple ideas about the issue?
So it depends on how you want to do business. If you want to ship directly from Spain, for example, then I think the one-stop shop is how you do it. And depending on the VAT difference, I think you have to pay the VAT of the destination country. And so it's 24%, which is for Greece. And I think the case is a bit different if you're using a seller here in Greece, where you have probably a different way of importing goods. But I don't think that, after all, it's any different. You probably have better logistics efficiencies, but in terms of taxes, it's probably the same thing. And I think if the business grows big, you have to have a local office or someone at least answering the phone in Greek. And I think that's above 25,000 euros in sales, but I'm not quite sure for the number.
Interesting again, yes. Registering the brand, taxes, and there are a couple of things that I think are or three things that I think are very, very important. First of all, and you already tackled them a little bit. You talked about logistics. That's the name of the game, I would say, a little bit in the case of Greece. Can you elaborate a little bit more? You talked already about big city, Athens, and also Thessaloniki, also Crete. But could you talk about how complicated the logistic issue is in the case of Greece, and how you solve the issue through your own company?
We're quite lucky that the country is so small that it's so easy to get items from Athens to Thessaloniki, where are the two main hubs, and also Thessaloniki is a hub connecting the Balkans as well. So a 4-hour trip is very easy. You don't have to have a truck on the road for a couple of days to get from one point in the country to another. So I think if you're not shipping to islands, it's pretty straightforward. Usually, if you're shipping by land, then you go to Thessaloniki, which is north. If you're doing by ship, you go to Piraeus, and then goods are shipped from there. Generally, the Greeks they're okay to wait a bit more for an item if it's something that they can't find in Greece, or if it's a bargain. So it's, you probably know it as well. A lot of people buy from China, which is 7 to 10 days at least, and it can get even to 15 days in some cases. But the reason is that in some cases the assortment doesn't exist elsewhere, or the price is really competitive compared to what they find in their local market. But what we've seen is that, especially in terms of assortment and fashion specifically, people are okay waiting a few more days or paying a premium on shipping fees if it's something unique that they can't find elsewhere.
Okay, well, that helps us understand and sort of like solve the problem of logistics, since point we always make in our studies is that the orography and the geography is a bit complicated. I think this will it will eventually help as well. The fact that the administration is trying to turn the country into a logistics hub, which means that most probably will have more transportation infrastructure working in the next few years. What about the payment methods? You mentioned that there's still some cash payments, obviously for several reasons. Credit card, is it the first way to pay?
So for
how does that
Skroutz,
work?
we have 80% some form of digital money. It could be also buy now, pay later, or consumer financing. And then we have a 20% also bank transfer, but it's a small percentage. And we have 20% cash on delivery. However, I think that outside of Skroutz, the cash on delivery percentage is probably a bit bigger. And the reason is that it has to do with consumer trust. So consumers trust Skroutz and they're not afraid of using their credit card. But if you're going to buy from a seller you've never bought before, it's probably going to be cash on delivery. But I think it's okay when you're buying from a trusted source. It's okay for us to use our credit cards.
Yeah, I think digital payments have growth also a lot from for the last few years. Got to do with events that happened in the previous decade and
Capital controls is one.
Credit cards being generalized as a
It used to
payment
be
method.
15%.
I remember I came here to the country in 2013 and there was very little transfer through credit cards, and it just
It exploded in the
switched.
last 10 years.
In 2015. Which is, I think, very good for this particular channel. What about advertising? We read a lot about using, for those who want to sell online, Google AdWords, agencies of advertising agencies, communication agencies. What's your take on that?
So, any
I guess you also help within the platform.
Exactly.
Of course.
Any kind of performance marketing, which is popular elsewhere, is also popular in Greece. So, social media performance marketing or Google AdWords. I think Google AdWords is probably the biggest of them all. And then we also provide advertising tools in Skroutz as well. So for brands that want to, especially for brands that want to enter the market, so they haven't created a name for themselves yet. So we can help them position themselves among other brands. We try not to be very aggressive on that because it can mess with the user's experience. So we're trying to be, as efficient but without hurting the consumer experience as possible. So I would say there are a lot of solutions, and there are also agencies. Greeks also have a very good, I would say, probably more than the average European country, they can speak English. So it's easy to find agencies that can...
I agree with you. Greece and Athens are way high in the rank of English-spoken environments in the European Union. So we tackle advertising. I want to ask you a couple questions for those that will not go through the platform or not yet at least, and would like to sell on their own shops, e-shops. What's the role there of quality seals, and could they work with the language, with English, or do they have to go with Greek? Well, you almost answered the question because you just said that there's a lot of English speak in the country. Would they have to translate into Greek?
I think there are some laws depending on the item. I think in some cases you have to have a manual in Greek. Or I think there has to be a website in Greek or something like that. It depends on the type of product, especially for food products. In some cases, you have to go through the EOF, which is the government body for food regulation, and But in all other cases, I think. It will go pretty easily with English only. And in some cases, Greeks prefer products that have, that are only in
The
English.
specs in English.
Because they feel more premium, I would guess. But we're fine with English. Even in our television ads are, in some cases, they have more English than Greek in some cases. So we're pretty familiar with the language, and I don't think that you have to do translation.
What's your take on quality seals? Do you think those add value? I mean, people would feel more reassured seeing those in the web pages, in the e-shops?
I don't have data on that, to be honest. But I don't think that, judging from the Greek culture, I don't think it's so popular. I mean, some people will probably care, but not the majority of the people.
Okay, let me just ask you a couple more questions about the platform, about the marketplace, about Skroutz. Could you mentioned a lot, you talked about last mile and the way you integrated the company so that transportation gets easier. Could you tell those that would eventually work with Skroutz, how does the model regarding transportation work?
So there are two ways. So one is that you ship the products, the company ship the products to a hub that we control, and then we make sure that we ship the products to the consumer. So that's one way. And the other way is that you partner with some last mile company, you ship the products yourself. In that case, we need to be able to track the package because it's very important for the consumer experience. So if we don't do it ourselves, we just have to integrate on that part where we exchange the shipment number and we can track the package for the consumer. That's it. So we can inform them that the package has arrived, it's going to be shipped in a couple of hours or something like that. And that's the only thing that it's required.
So it's quite easy. So either you send it to a place where you control the whole process, or you can track it so that the consumer experience is good enough, but it's the company that deals directly with it.
And alternatively, we can even host it in our warehouses. So we have a fulfillment by Skroutz model where you host the items, you store the items in our warehouse, and then we ship it from our warehouse. So, but this is probably at a later stage when we see that there's enough demand for those products.
Another question that I think the audience will be interested in knowing about: how could you accelerate your partners' growth? I mean, well, the sellers. Exactly.
So this is probably the thing that keeps us awake at night, and there are a lot of dynamics that we have to take in account. There were 2 years ago probably reduced spending in Greece, because most money were transferred to utility bills. So one thing, the macro environment is something that we cannot control. But in all other areas, what we're trying to do is, especially for e-commerce, we're trying to chip away some of the share of the retail, the traditional brick and mortar retail commerce. So that's one thing we're trying to do. We're constantly investing in the network. We're constantly investing in the experience of the users. We have an influencer network for presenting products and inspiring people. And we also have a team of people that partner with the sellers, trying to give them advice on how to sell more, on what products. We also offer tools, data tools for sellers to be able to discover what products are popular. And I think we're focused on that, but it's not one thing that makes a seller grow. First and foremost, the seller has to be prepared to do that, to want to grow, because a lot of scaling issues will come up. As soon as you go from 10 orders per day to 100, it's a totally different game. And then from 100 to 1,000 orders, a totally different game altogether. And there are some things that we cannot do for the merchant. Although now with the warehouse, we can even handle this. So you can, probably have a store somewhere in a remote area, ship everything to warehouse, and we do anything for the merchant. The merchant only has to do sourcing and merchandising of the products.
Yes, I think you said something that is very important there, which is that the merchant has to be prepared. And I go back to being prepared maybe even before you get started with e-commerce, which is sometimes we tend to say today that companies can get going directly through e-commerce, and that's a possibility, of course, but you have to be prepared for that. So that's why we raise some programs back home, so we can get them be prepared to go on e-commerce, on platforms, which is not an everyday thing.
Game.
It's a different game.
There are no holidays, no Saturdays, no Sundays, no bank holidays or things like that. You're working 24/7, so you're receiving orders all day, and it used to be that it's easier and probably cheaper than traditional advertising. Not anymore. I think the reach is bigger because you can, in Greece, for example, you can ship to Greece, so you're not restricted from the area that you're operating, but it's equally difficult to traditional retail, I would say. It's not a toy. It used to be a toy in Greece, and at some point government, I think, subsidized the costs of creating an e-commerce website, and there was a boom there, but you need to take
But even
it seriously.
that, you need to have, I would say, quite a lot of expertise to be able to sell, even if you have an e-shop, a website.
Exactly.
It's not just you create the e-shop and you're ready to go. You need software, you need to know about marketing, digital marketing, you need to know about many things to be ready to go for it.
If you choose, if you want to do it on your own, yes, you need to know about those things. And you have to probably learn a lot of things that are not in your expertise as a merchant. So marketing is one, operations, logistics. But if you use a channel like Skroutz, then probably 99% of those hassles you don't have to deal with. So
let me ask you, now that you mentioned that, effectively I agree with you, that would be much easier. You don't have to go through many of those things if you go through a platform. How complicated or simple is the onboarding into a marketplace such as Skroutz?
So I think the only thing that we will probably have a problem is content. So if the content is not translated, then it needs a bit more work. But still, if the products are for a small number of products, it's not so difficult to translate. If you have a very big catalog, then we need to do some work there. Other than that, it's just a KYC process, and that's it.
Do you have many international companies selling already in the platform?
Yes, we have quite a few. I think we have a couple from Spain as well. But
I think so as well.
I think they're selling to all Europe, not just Greece. But we are from Poland, Romania, Germany, France. So we have companies from all around Europe.
Okay, well, listen, it's been a very, very interesting conversation. A lot of ideas out there. We talked about the way the country has been digitalized, the double-digit growth of digitalization, specifically of e-trade. We talk about B2C, B2B, B2G. We heard about the success story of Skroutz, which happens to be the first e-commerce marketplace in the country as of today, willing to expand, if I understood correctly, to the region, to operate within the region. Thank you very much for all the tips regarding brand registration, taxation, logistics, payment methods, advertising, and so on and so forth, and about the details you gave us about the platform, about the marketplace. So thanks a lot for joining today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I would like to also announce that we will be having more info about the platform, about the marketplace, most probably next June the 11th at 10 a.m. Spanish time, or 11 a.m. Greek time. And that's that. Y nosotros Nos vemos de nuevo pronto en Oportunidades en Grecia. Aún hay mucho por conocer. Modelos alternativos de inversión en el país, el papel de los servicers en el sistema financiero griego, presente y futuro del agroalimentario, el vino, el ecosistema de startups. Hasta pronto.